Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lisa Gloria, and this is the thrilling conclusion of the blue teapot painting. If you've been following along already, you'll know that this is the third day, and this is the finish, assuming nothing goes horribly wrong. So what I want to do is show you how to finish a painting. When I was looking at YouTube videos trying to figure out how to paint as a self-taught painter, there were certain gaps, and one of those gaps was how to bring something to its close, to its end. There's loads of videos about starting a painting, but nothing about really assessing, well, very few, about assessing where you are and determining how to complete a project. So let's talk about that. Looking at what we've got right now, the painting is, everything is cracked up to be, but there are things that need to be done in order to finish it. The first one, I believe, is going to be darkening the background. Then we're going to take another pass on the body of the teapot and the lid and add those highlights, which is going to make a huge deal, a huge difference. And then we'll finish up the table surface and the reflections. And this should take an hour, maybe an hour and a half. I made the point in the last video that even though this is not alla prima, the actual time that you would spend doing this is not too dissimilar. So the first thing that I want to do is oil in. My colors are a bit sunken in, which means that the oil that was in the paint has sunk to a lower level and leaving the surface kind of matte and dull, but also it affects the values, which would be replaced when I go back, when it's done and I varnish it. So right now I need to see what I've really got here, which includes being able to see where the values really are. What did I do? Picked up a little bit of titanium white on my brush here. Well, it's unfortunate, or my finger, I'm not sure which. Okay. Hold up. I don't have any music today because my Wi-Fi isn't working, so I'll try to be entertaining. I'm just going to get a different sponge. These are makeup sponges, which are closed cell sponge, which means that they have a nice fine surface. They don't scrape the surface of the painting. They deposit just a little bit, and you can get them in packs of, I don't know, a couple of dozen for just a buck or two. See, this looks demonstrably different than it did before I oiled it in. The tabletop comes back to life. I can see where I'm actually at. But aside from just bringing colors back to where they are, it also provides a good surface for glazing and scumbling. And glazing and scumbling really is the final, or one of the final stages of bringing a painting to a finish. There are some good glazing videos on YouTube. I like Osamu Obi quite a bit, but he paints these giant figurative paintings with so much detail. They're this example is much, much simpler. But the oiled surface is a good first step. My palette for today is titanium white, yellow ochre, brown pink, cobalt blue hue, Van Dyke brown, ivory black. I've also got a little bit of Lquin's impasto medium over here, which I will use almost entirely in this section of the painting in order to give a 3D feel to the light values of the teapot. So to glaze the background, I've got some Van Dyke brown, and I'm going to add a little bit of linseed oil to it, just like a drop. And since the background itself is already got a very, very thin layer of linseed oil on it, this is going to deposit a small amount of pigment. But in general, I was feeling like the background was simply too light. So I'm going to take a large brush, pick up some of this paint, and go over what I've done. You see how very, very little paint is actually being deposited on the surface. Working like this, it is really, really difficult to blow away everything that you did before. All the paint that we worked on before is going to come through. Van Dyke brown is also a transparent pigment. That's an important thing to say that I should have said before. Glazing you do in transparent pigments, right? Scumbling, you add varying amounts of opaque pigment. It's usually white. And having opaque pigment in there creates a different kind of effect. Oh, yes. I prefer transparent backgrounds. And so to me, that's just, I think it's just lovely to have these like subtle, misty backgrounds. You can't quite make out what's going on back there, but you know it's something. And this is really useful for shadows. Sometimes you can do some modeling on like fabric to glaze the shadows and then scumble the lights to really give a sense of form to a complicated plain situation like you have with fabric. So I'm kind of looking at this and going, you know, where do I want to add a little bit more? Or less. I don't want to create any kind of, oh, I like that a lot. Okay. I don't want to create any kind of distraction in the background. The entire point of this painting is to make the teapot the highlight, the star of the show. So if I fall too in love with other details, that'll distract from the highlight of the show. I was kind of considering at the beginning, like doing much more detail in the background, just because I enjoy painting things with patterns and complicated shapes in them, but that's really not the point of this painting. one interesting thing is that if I had gotten the background to this value when I first painted it, ooh, you see how that's coming together? See how the top of the teapot lid, the handle, just pops out at you. So if I had done the background in these values to begin with, which are, looks like about 2 value steps darker than where I started at, would I still glaze the background? And for me personally, yes, I would. 2 or 3 glazes where the hues differ in subtle ways adds just this beautiful misty feeling that I really like, but that's just my personal preference. I was trying to figure out why I like still life, and it feels like, to me, there's just some kind of like childhood memory of visiting relatives when I was a tiny person, and or my grandma even, and they would always have this like stuff, this magical stuff. You know, my grandma had a collection of blown glass animals and a piano that I broke once. On shelves, there was all this stuff you weren't allowed to touch. People would have candy dishes strewn about. I don't know if that's a thing people even do anymore. Imagine they don't. And going over to relatives' houses, kind of get to wander around on your own a little bit because children were not going to be invited to the grown-up conversations. So I could just wander and look at people's stuff, and would be in these dimly lit hallways out of the way, you know, with conversations in the far off distance, maybe light from a window filtering down over people's collection of magical baubles. And I think that's why I love still life. It just reminds me of that. Okay. I'm gonna do the lid first. I know every other time I've done the pot and then I've done the lid. This time I'm gonna do the lid first, because again, we're glazing. So I've got Van Dyke brown, yellow ochre. Let's go a little bit of white. I'm glazing, so everything will be kind of a light touch. I had to get my hand rest, my maul stick. I like to let the shadows kind of melt into each other. And then put the harder edges on the light side. So I'm going to take the shadow color and add white. That was far too much, so I don't know why I did that. I still want to be in the shadow area, so I got to get back down to that value. I want to cool that off a tiny bit, so I'm going to add some blue in there. And when I see it, I just put it in. I'm not thinking too hard about it. One of the things that I do is I think of I visualize the color wheel as kind of a dial. So if I think of something as cool, I'm really thinking of it as cooler. And by thinking of it that way, I know that in order to get to cooler, I need to go blue or brown, something like that. And I add just a little bit of it to dial my color, to dial my paint back where I feel like it should be. And at this point, I kind of, I've been doing this for a while, so I kind of think of it like painting by sense of smell, because it's a lot like cooking. When you think to yourself, oh, this needs more salt, that's not a process of measuring. And most of the time, I think you probably don't even measure how much salt you put in, but you do kind of know what more salt means to you. So painting is pretty similar. You think of yourself, more blue. That doesn't mean blue, it just means more blue. I like where this is going. The light side of this, I'm going to add a little bit of my impasto medium, a little bit of blue, just so I can get some thicker paint on here. Impasto doesn't have to be like, a giant peanut buttery glob. It can be just slightly thicker. And that will make a difference. It will make a big difference. Down here, there's a little bit of a reflection. Oh, hold up. I'm going to use a mongoose. This is a rosemary mongoose, and just tap and soften these transitions. And I'm going from dark to light. Because this is a round thing, right? The top is a round object that is rotating back towards the background. And the reason that I bring this up is edges. So what should my edges look like, you know? I'm going to want to keep the sides soft, because that will enhance the idea, the impression that this object is rotating. Not physically rotating, but this is a round object. So if you're painting something like a sphere or an orange or an apple or anything that's basically a round object in space, keeping those edges soft will help enhance that illusion. And now I want my highlights. And then I'll be able to judge when I go to the teapot how my highlights look there. So switch to a, I'm not sure, Chinese calligraphy brush. It's a very floppy, soft brush that comes to a very nice point. But I don't know what kind of hair it is. So I've got 3 little highlights up there, and then 1 reflection right there. What do you think? That looks like a lid? I think it does. I do feel a little like that highlight got out of control. Nice, okay. I'm just making sure my shadow is in where I want it. Neato. I just never really get over this, how much fun it is to create things out of what is basically dirt. That's all oil paint is. Rocks and dirt ground up, suspended in oil. It's crazy that we can make things look like anything out of this, but we can. So moving on to the teapot itself. First I'm going to mix up my shadow colors of paint. And if I recall correctly, that mixture is cobalt blue hue and yellow ochre. And it's a little tricky to stay on the blue side instead of the turquoise side. Right, but that's where we are. Okay, that's good. Then take a little of that over here and add a little bit, just a little bit of white. And I don't need a huge amount, right? Because I've already done the work, so I'm not starting over from scratch. I am enhancing the work that I've already done. I could definitely add in some oil if I wanted to, but I'm not going to do that. I don't think I need to. So let's go back, because I think that the dark side of this is actually pretty spot on. So what I really need to do here is I'm just refining edges and giving this more subtlety. Since I started this new series of painting videos, I thought, what did I want to start with? I won't always be doing full demonstrations like this. I think a lot of people want you to do alla prima on YouTube, and so I can do that, of course. But this is not how I spend my career. I don't usually paint. I mean, this is how I spend my career. I don't usually paint things alla prima for gallery sales. Most work actually takes much, much longer than that, and has much higher expectation of being lifelike and, exploring the painter's bag of tricks than executing it in a day can really allow. And again, just to be clear, I'm not disparaging alla prima at all. It's definitely its own set of tricks and magical properties, but just most of my paintings are going to take much more time than that. Which I prefer. I like to spend the time that it takes and not worry over much about, who's looking over my shoulder and whether they think I'm going fast enough. I think that kind of worry is really self-destructive. It takes as long as it takes until you've solved the puzzle. That's nice. Up in here, I see. Now that I'm older, I see the value of all of those exercises that I didn't really see the value of before, like doing color charts and painting spheres, things like that. Because once you know those exercises, then you have that information at your fingertips forever. This is glazing. See how thin that is? If I didn't mention it before, you can get this photo reference from the description. I've put it online for anybody who wants to paint along and try this on their own. And if you do, please let me know. Shoot me an email or send me a picture or find me on Instagram and tag me, post it on Instagram and tag me. That would be fun. This is my own picture, so there's no problem with the rights. You could definitely use it. But of course, if you make a painting from it, you need to credit it as a study or from a demo or whatever. I'm just going through and looking for the different parts of the reflections. So what we see here on this side is that we're in the light shadow area, but we've also got a shadow / reflection of this handle right here. So that's what I'm trying to make sure I get properly documented here. There we go. That's nice. And since I'm painting around the camera, trying to be as accurate as possible in this situation. Usually I don't have to paint around a camera. So what happens here in the shadow? It can't be wrong, but people don't really see the shadows. The shadow holds up the light. What they see is the light. So the light is where you're going to want to, if you don't get lost in the shadows, is basically what I'm trying to say. It's very easy when you're staring at this to kind of see, you stare into the shadows and you start to see more and more detail in the shadows. And as you're doing this more and more detail in the shadows, unbeknownst to you, what you're actually doing is widening your value range in the shadows, which is going to make it very difficult when you get to the light. because you're just kind of creeping into values that should only be in the light. Totally natural. But like I say, that's why it's important to do those sphere studies and stuff like that, because that is the problem that you're solving there. Ta-da! That looks good. Oops. Now, I need to make sure that this area actually is nice and dark. At the bottom edge here, I'm going to let it kind of drift a little bit into the background so I can keep that edge soft. And then the lip on the bottom. So what I'm really going to do on the bottom is I'm not going to, I'm going to model the shadow here, see? In the middle. But I'm just going to let the light edge be the underpainting. Because it doesn't need it. It's already where I need it to be. La la la. Now should I blend this? I'm gonna say no. Let me get to the light side and see if I need it, but I'm not sure I'm gonna need it. Down here in this area, we have a little bit of a reflected light situation from the tabletop. So I'm going to warm that up a little bit with some brown pink and honor that. Tiny brush strokes. Yeah, I know we talked about the tiny brush strokes before, but I'm sticking to my guns on this. Adding a little bit of impasto medium here. This is my natural handwriting here. I like it. Coming out to this edge, I'm going to let it be soft. Yeah. Make sure that this value is turning here. It's important to get these ellipses. Ellipses are referred to like the curved curved expression of the sphere here. If you do not get the ellipses placed in the right place and curving at the right angle, they're going to look weird. It'll look like, you know, like something has gone very, very wrong. And they don't have to be, sometimes you can kind of fake your way out of it by leaving everything kind of mushy. But really, no, just get it right. Check it by looking at it in a mirror. You know, you've probably heard that trick before. Oops, I know that's too much yellow. Okay, I don't like that at all. Put that over there. Let's try our eye again. There we go. That's better. Test it. Yeah, okay. I think I pointed out before that when we get to the light areas, they're not super light blue because you can see the highlights are what is the lightest part. I think I want to dull it down with a little bit of black. Okay, how are we doing there? Yeah, there we go. And for this, now we're in the light. So I'm going to lay the paint on a bit thicker here. I think my lightest part is right here. And then it falls off pretty fast. Now I can see there are some variations here. And I'm thinking to myself also, what's going to be interesting to look at as far as brushstrokes go? I want to make sure that whoever buys this has something rewarding to stare at. I want it just a little bit lighter for this. For that light right there. This is my sable brush again. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I feel like my lights are too light over here. So hold on. Yeah, that's better. Sorry about that. I got kind of, I don't know. I don't know why. Just didn't do it right. That's better. Instead of fighting with it, I just kind of picked it up with a paper towel so I could start over. Because yeah, you can tinker with it and eventually get it back up to the value where you want it to be, but just start over. Yeah, I could feel that. Definitely coming together better. But if there's too much paint in the shadow area, then I can't really adjust it the way that I want to. So paper towel, tip of your finger, one of those silicone tools, whatever you need, just wipe it out and start over. And soften my transitions. Okay. Let's get these highlights in. This is the part we've all been waiting for, or I know I have. I actually feel like this is kind of has a bit of a purple tint to it. So I'm going to use cobalt blue and brown pink and then white, which will have just barely a tint of purple to it. Okay. the highlights, I think, are like the dessert course. This is where you really start to see the fruits of everything you've done. Okay, okay, okay. Now the ones that I've been waiting for. The way that I'm going to approach this highlight is first I'm going to do the specular light. Give me just a second here because I'm missing something on my palette that I want. Okay, I just paused the video for a second so I could grab some alizarin crimson. I don't need a lot, just a little tiny bit, but it will make a difference. This is what I'm seeing in the specular highlights, is meaning that as the highlight kind of scatters, it creates a halo around itself. And that halo will often have a different color than the highlight itself. So I like to put that in first. Sometimes it's pink, sometimes it's red, sometimes it's orange, blue, purple, whatever. So I'm going to put that in first. Oh, I see it up there too. Then I'm going to soften the transitions until it's just about gone, actually. This kind of imitates the light scattering. And then I'm going to get my real highlights, which in this case is going to be titanium white and, oh, the tiniest dollop of yellow ochre, plus some of this impasto medium. I press, and kind of lift off. Then with my mongoose again, same thing. Take it, soften it out. I'm holding my breath in case you can't tell. And then back in the very center of it, press and then lift. And this one's a little softer. See? Okay, let's do that again. We got a little round one right here. And we've got, and by press and lift, I'm talking about the way that I'm using the brush to drag out here. This one got it out of hand. And then, so I do the process here, right? And then I go in and I do my look again. But I almost always have to get up, walk away, turn around, and look at it again with fresh eyes, because sometimes this effect is just so drastic that at first I'm like, whoa, what have I done? And I need to see it from far away. Ooh, I kind of dig it. Yes. Nice. Okay. And then I feel like over here, there we go. Whoops, wrong brush. Okay, okay, okay. Take another final look at the foot of the pot right here. And make sure that it is also rounded. Would anybody notice? I don't really, it's hard to say. If you go through the art museum and look with a critical eye at old master paintings, you can find all kinds of things that are messed up. But we trust them and they're so convincing. You might not notice, but I think it's better to try to be correct. There now. It's a teapot, y'all. Okay. It's a teapot with enough, I think, interesting stuff to look at in the rendering that it's pretty successful. The thicker paint gives it a sense of presence, really occupying the space. The thicker paint in the light is what I'm referring to. The brush strokes, the visible brush strokes really help out the situation. Because it is a painting and I don't want it to look like anything but a painting. I appreciate photorealism, it's just not my bag. Oh, that's nice, that's nice. I want to take a quick look right here though. I feel like it's just a little strained. Alrighty. So what needs to happen in the foreground? I don't think very much. I think if we glaze the shadows, it kind of already is a foreground. I go a little darker in here. And yeah. I mean, I have a lot of options. I could I'll sharpen this edge and darken that. Sharpening this edge is what helps it pop forward and look like the end of a table. So we're going to go black and brown pink. We already oiled in, so we're good that way. So I just kind of want to very subtly reinforce the work that we already did. but not, I'm not going to go crazy here. I know that this is the same color mixture that I used before because I've painted this table a bunch of times. And in my studio lighting, this is the color mixture that works for me. And the reason I bring that up is because if it was a different mixture, then I might need to go over all of the table in order to make sure that I wasn't introducing optical grays where I didn't mean to and where they're not useful. See, quick little table edge. In the back here, there's that rolled detail at the top. See, that's nice because by enhancing the depth back here, that gives me more of a sense that the teapot is in front of something, that there's a foreground and a background. I'm going to do the same thing here by giving this a drop shadow. It gives a better sense that it is sitting on top of something. Just like with landscapes, I'm not going to reinforce that tiny little bit of table behind the handle, because you know how when you're painting trees, if you make the holes between the leaves too bright, it all looks wrong. Same thing. And darken this a little bit. Having that thin layer of oil on the painting really is a useful tool. Don't forget the handle, shadow. Subtle, but it's there. Okay, and then along the bottom here, I just want this edge to be sharp enough to be like, you know, the end of the flat world. Next week, I think I was thinking about doing another portrait, but I wanted to do something interesting, like, I like to take stills from TV shows. A little more complicated than it sounds, but, you know, just kind of take a screenshot and then paint from that, if I could find a good one. So maybe I'll find something good to show you. But anyway, we're just about calling this painting. Please like and subscribe. Once again, I forget to ask you to do that at the beginning of the show because I get distracted. And sorry there was no music today, but hopefully I'll have that problem resolved soon. I hope that you enjoyed this. I really did. And I'll see you next week. Just one last thing I gotta do here. I'm gonna take some yellow and brown pink and Van Dyke brown. That's my name. Lisa Gloria. Find me at lisagloria.info. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you made one too. See you soon.